Hello everyone and welcome back to another Worms Wednesday. I'm your host Strix Nighty. Don't know the terrain style of this map, but it appears to be a double island large size. This is a ranked game. I'm playing as the Red Worms. My opponent had a very interesting strategy. There's plenty of places on this map to duck for cover and to hide inside of terrain. And there are plenty of vehicles, but it seems to be more, I would say, vertically built than it is horizontally. And so if you've played Worms, you know some maps just seem to be built like a mountain. It's all about getting the high ground and shooting down. And some maps seem to be about having a good spread. And this was definitely somewhere towards the laterally built higher maps. You can see my opponent is the blue worms, putting most of the worms inside of kind of covered areas. So now I have very difficult job because I like to usually play my games and finish before the time hits 0-0 and the water starts to rise. That's sometimes not always an option. This is being played at 2x playback speed so that it's a little bit easier for you to kind of sit through, I guess. Worms games do take a long time, especially if the opponent is going for a big duck and cover game. And as we saw in the last episode, it all comes down to the last few seconds sometimes with these worms. Very easy to lose worms at the end as the water starts to rise. Going for a gas grenade here. My opponent going to change location. Kind of get a better worm in a more of a covered position. At this point, I'm just opting to take out the higher worms as best I can. Going for a Rocket League car. Trying to figure out desperately how to use it. And finally make it up. But will I be able to make a turn before the end? Very unlikely. I'm actually really happy with this map. This had a lot of different situations that I had to deal with. And that's what I like out of Worms map, is a lot of variety. Some of the more default maps tend to get boring in the way they're built. There's only 2 buildings on this map. There's a very, very strange central structure in the middle, though. What appears to be those plants with the eyeballs on them, the rock in the middle, and then another plant with eyeballs on it, forming a large wall in between the two sides. My opponent getting for a little bit more of a covered position. And you hate to see it. All right. Moving back to my turn. I think I'm going to target this worm because I really want to take control of this mortar turret. Opting for a shotgun. Will I be able to get the second shot in? I will not. Sometimes it closed out to that last second. And this is like the 4th or so turn, and just now is damage starting to be dealt. That is just how big this map is. Opponent looking to box me in. Again, I've seen this strategy. It's kind of like a pacifist strategy. Ooh, you hate to see it again. Sort of a pacifist strategy. Getting the opponent's worms to be kind of blocked in a position where they can't really do anything but blow themselves up to get out. But I mean, with enough of those burrowing tools, you can usually get out. Be interesting if girders you can burrow through or drop airstrikes on. For the YouTube missile, I believe, and a health pack there. Now I'm thinking about putting this Rocket League car on this side so I don't have to waste anything. Allowing the next time that I do get that worm to just hop in that Rocket League vehicle and kind of phase through that wall. There's that bomb coming back the next turn, and a direct hit right on me. Dealing not much damage. I believe only 28. Hot dog here, this worm that you see on the left side of your screen, he's going to be trying to get it into that little cavern that's been put by my opponent with that helicopter there. Here there was a little bit of a disconnect, and it took a little bit of a while to get back. That's why I have things on 2x speed, to make things like this a little bit easier to sit through. During this time, this does happen from time to time, you can't really move the screen at all, and you just kind of got to sit there and hope that everything's going to come back. It did. It was a lot more bearable than it was in person. Going for an airstrike there would be great, but I think that opponent's just trying to point to those worms. He seems to do that quite a bit. Maybe I was missing something. Trying to do the best burrow that I can through this wall and try to make their way to get back out. At this point, I'm even completely ignoring crates because I just don't even think that I have time for it. I considered this worm all but dead for its location, because if it does go to overtime, this is the first worm that's going to get it. It's down pretty low, and here you can see that worm that was trapped in there just hopped in the Rocket League car and got right out. Grabbing that health pack. Going for this worm. And getting 2 shots in and quickly retreating. That worm is now at 50 health, and that other worm that I just had is at 125. So a net 25 so a net plus 25 from that turn. And again, like I said, making sure that that vehicle is set on a position so that if your opponent does hop in, your worm does drop to a better location. More of a kind of lower position, the more tank depression or weapon depression that opponent needs to kind of move out, take out that worm. Don't often use the drone, but there I used it, got kind of a garbage weapon from it. But all things considered, just looking to clear some more terrain here. And my opponent has that helicopter stuck. So just now waiting and opting for me to hop in. Homing rocket dealing a nice amount of damage there. Now we're back to that underground worm. I remember strictly one game where I got burrowed, and it was a cavern map, and we were stuck at the very, very top of the map. And I lost to what was essentially a little divot in the ground. We basically burrowed the very ceiling of the map out to try to get at each other and kill each other before the game came to a tie. And that ended up losing me the game because I accidentally stepped into a hole that I couldn't see because there was too much water on the ground and died from it. So you really got to be careful. Even with these games that seem like they're going really slow, things can change in a moment when you have too many worms and the water starts to rise. It is absolutely a viable strategy to try to wait till the end of the game. I've seen it been used effectively too many times. Now this time I'm going for the missile. And now that the helicopter's been free, but it's kind of stuck. Direct hit on that rocket hog, dealing 120 damage. I've never seen it done that much before. That worm is thoroughly toast, and I believe that that helicopter did end up doing 1 damage to itself after it did about 6 damage to me. At this point, I'm just looking to clear this hole even deeper. I believe my opponent now only has 2 worms left. It's about 4 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock. Blaze it. Going for another worm select. And now trapping me. I'm not a fan of auto turrets if you've been watching any of my previous worms videos. There, I very almost did destroyed my 125 worm there. Sometimes the mortars have a little bit of like a extra rocket drop off that they have. So they'll hit an object and they'll drop a few like instantaneous grenades. And I almost managed to knock my own worm into the water there. That opposing worms, now the lower part of the map has now gone to the higher part of the map. And this is what I'm talking about. Now that was a great turn. If you ever want to just get rid of a position, just make it so that you blow up a vehicle, blow up your own worm. That worm's now almost finished off. So I could have done that a lot better, but because I was up on the amount of worms that I have, I believe I'm still at 4, I realized I wasn't going to get back to that worm very fast unless I use a worm select. And I just opted to simplify the game. It was also to do with the fact that I hate those auto turrets, that I just wanted to blow it up. Going for a girder here, trapping himself in again. A lot of girders. This is like the 4th one, I think. It's not going to be too much of a problem for me. About a minute and 40 seconds till these waters start to rise. My opponent manages to get up the hole this time, but it's having a little bit of difficulty getting up this section here. Sort of see those drop-off mines that come off of the mortars. Trying to burrow in from the other side now to deal a little bit of additional damage. Opponent looking to target Brat there. Dealing 38, and I think that machine gun blows up. Dealing an additional 14, bringing Brat down to 20. What was I going for there? Absolutely nothing. Opponent's going to have a little bit of easier time getting up this hole this time. Probably coming back to Brat. Appears that there's just too much terrain in that way. And here comes the water. Go for the jetpack, taking that item, whatever it is. And now I'm having a tough time getting over the terrain, so I just opted to hide in that burrowed spot. And here's where the strategy all comes together for holding worms out. Now it's time to take them out one at a time. Because I have too many worms, it's going to be really hard for me to balance every one of them. I was expecting that turn for my opponent to pull off the magnet, but I believe that my opponent turns it off on the next time he has that worm. That's the end of that worm. So I have a 35, a 125, and my opponent has a 4 and a 96. And it is pretty evenly matched because I have the lowest worm now. Bringing my 125 worm to the highest spot, which immediately after I did it, I realized was a bad decision. And this is what I'm talking about. Yep, magnet. So that repel magnet will shoot basically anything away from it that's not like a sheep or something. So this thing this point, I'm thinking, I got to shoot a magnet at that. I got to shoot a mortar at that magnet, shoot it up higher towards the ceiling, and let those kind of mines drop on top of it to hopefully knock that 96 worm off. There's a super lot of terrain in there. Just opting to pass the turn, let the water rise a little bit faster. And that magnet, even it works on allied weapons, so it just shot that rocket right over top of me. And now I'm just shooting right over top of him. Water's continuing to rise. I think that was targeted for my 125 worm, but came really close to my 35. And going for a little bit of overkill here, dropping this airstrike right on this worm. Finishing off a 4 worm with 42 damage. Which honestly now only makes him stronger. Because now he's only got 1 worm to worry about. And keep in a good position. It becomes all about defense. Dropping a second magnet there, second repel. And that water's about halfway up, and very little of this terrain is even left. And at this point, I knock my own worm onto him, which would have been game for me. Just to show you how quickly it can be. You can lose these games to people who burrow. And that's what they're hoping for. They're hoping you're going to lose interest. They're hoping you're going to run out of steam at some point. You're going to lose concentration. You're going to drop your worm on a bad spot. You're going to do something stupid to just keep the game moving. And oftentimes that strat does work, but not today. Knocking that worm sky high. Thank you guys for joining me again. I will see you guys next Worms Wednesday. Peace.